Hi there, and welcome to this demo of integrating Dell EMC XtremIO with VMware Site Recovery Manager 8.2. My name is Vsi, I'm Vice President of Technology here at Dell EMC, and today I'm going to talk about and show you a demonstration on how to install the new SRA for SRM 8.2. And then I'm going to have a deep dive into how to use the unique point-in-time integration for test and recovery purposes. So VMware have just released a new version of their Site Recovery Manager product, also known as SRM, version 8.2 to be more specific, and this is a quite unique version that I thought would require to record a new demo. Why is it so unique? Because for the first time the SRM software itself can run on an integrated OVA Photon appliance as opposed to install SRM on a Windows server, which is quite interesting. And it's interesting because you as a customer can first save on Windows licensing fee, because now it's come embedded within its own appliance. It doesn't require to connect to external database. It has its own integral database. Patching is very easy. You don't need to patch the operating system itself, and whatever VMware will come with subsequent releases after 8.2, just point to the OVA and run an update directly from within the VMware portal, which will do the update for you. So everything in terms of maintenance and installation is super easy. But that's just one part of it. The other part is that now the SRA, which is the intermediator interface that communicates between Vcenter to the storage array, is actually packaged as a Docker image, which was very interesting to develop. At XtremIO, we now support it from day 0. So the moment that you install SRM 8.2, that as I mentioned was just released, we already have an adapter. So first thing first, you first need to go to the VMware website as usual to download the product, and if you go to the download option for SRM 8.2, you will see that there are actually two flavors of SRM 8.2. You can continue still going on and download and install and upgrade your existing SRM server running on a Windows server, which is this executable, or you can go ahead and download and install from scratch the new SRM OVA appliance, which is what we're going to do in our lab. So just click download. It's going to take roughly 1 point something gig. You download the OVA image and you just deploy it just like any other OVA. It will require you to specify an IP address, and username and password, etc., etc., and that's it. That's the only thing you need to do in order to download and deploy it. Apart from downloading the SRM appliance itself, you also need to download the XtremIO SRA, and in order to do that, into the same download page, you go to the Drivers and Tool tab, click the Storage Replication Adapter, click Go to Downloads, and here you're actually going to see two XtremIO SRAs. Why do we have two? For the same reason there are two flavors of SRM 8.2. The first one, as you can see, it's a zip file, and it tells you that it's for the Windows operating system. So if you still continue to run SRM on a Windows server, that's the SRA you need to download. And the second one is the new one. That's the SRA that is now being packaged as the Docker image. And as you can see, if you go to the OS, it shows you that the SRM is actually running as a Photon OS, which is a special flavor of Linux that VMware are packaging SRM. So that's the one you probably want to download if you're going to use the new SRA. Just click the download button and remember where you save this file to. Now I'm assuming that you already know how to deploy an OVA appliance. As I mentioned before, it's nothing unique, and it's just like deploying any other OVA within VMware. So what we're going to do is we're going to log on into the SRM OVA that you just deployed with this specific port. So it's the IP address or the DNS name with port 5480. Click OK, which will log you into this page. You should have the credentials because those were specified as part of the OVA deployment, and click Login. The first thing that we probably want to do is configure the appliance to connect to the Vcenter. So if you're familiar with SRM, each SRM server needs to connect to its own local Vcenter. So you should have one SRM appliance with a local Vcenter appliance, and then you should have exactly the same to the remote SRM and Vcenter appliance, which in many cases is the DR site. So here we're going to specify the Vcenter FQDN, which is in my case it's this one. I'm going to give it a username and password. That's the username and password that have full admin credentials on Vcenter. Click the next button. I'm using a auto certificate, so I'm just going to click connect. It found the Vcenter. Click the next button. Approve the warning again. Now I should give it a name for the local site name. So normally in my Intel lab, I just call it local site. And here you can specify whatever email that you want to. In real life, this should probably be a real valid email address. Click the next button. Finish. It's now going to reconfigure its own embedded database, which, as I mentioned, it's one of the perks of using the new SRM. And you can see that the appliance was configured. Next, I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the DR SRM server. So here you can see it's a different IP address. I'm going to configure the appliance here as well, pointing it to use the DR SRM, DR Vcenter server, and approve exactly the same warnings and confirmation as I did before. It's going to configure the local database, of course, again for the DR, Vcenter, and SRM, and the DR SRM server was successfully configured. The next thing we're going to do is to actually install the SRA on the two SRM appliances. So here I've got my downloaded SRA zip file. I'm going to extract it. You can use whatever extracting software that you want to use. And you can see that once I've got the installer zip, I need to extract it as well. It contains the PDF README file and the actual installer folder. So this is what we're actually going to use. You should see it as a tar.gz extension. So what we're going to go and do now is go back to the SRA. So here I'm on the prod SRM, and I'm going to go to the storage replication adapter tab, click new adapter, and point into the actual installer folder that I just extracted. So it's this one. Gonna double click this one, and that's pretty much it. It's now uploading the new SRA. It's quite big, roughly 200 and so meg, and I'm going to do the same thing on the remote SRA server as well. Click new adapter, pointing to the same folder that I extracted the original one from. And that's pretty much it. Upon the successful upload of the SRA on both of the SRM appliances, you should get a success pop-up window, and here you can actually see the SRAs that were installed. SRM were always able to work with different multiple SRAs, so if you've got other arrays than just XtremIO, you can actually see them all listed here, as long as they are, of course, supported with the new SRM OVA appliance. So that's pretty much it. That's what I need to do in order to install the SRM and upload the new SRA. The update tab is also the tab that I mentioned before, so if there is a new version of SRM, it will be listed here, which you can then just configure and update your existing one. Now when I log to the production Vcenter, you can actually see that it detects that the new plugin, which is the SRM plugin, has been detected, and if I refresh the browser, this new SRM plugin will actually be available. Now we're going to talk about a special integration that VSI has with the VMware Site Recovery Manager, also known as SRM. SRM is the leading automation software to automate disaster recovery with VMware vSphere. From a storage perspective, what we can see is that I have a volume that I formatted, of course, as a VMFS data store, which is this volume. And if I go to data protection, I can see that there is a replication session running on that volume from 1632 to 1633. And then if we could go to the session, we can see this session is active with all the fancy new UI that we have in XIOS 6.1. We can see the RPO setting, we can see the actual RPO versus the one that was set, and all of the interesting things. From a vSphere perspective, I have here my SRM 8.1 version, which is the version that's first utilizing HTML5 UI. And you can see that I created a recovery plan and a protection group, which is basically a substitute of that specific data store that I selected before, which is this one, VMFS 01. And you can see that I have two VMs on this data store that I'm actually protecting. So it's all good and nice. And now I can invoke VMware SRM either for testing purposes or for full failover purposes by clicking the Run button. Unfortunately, VMware Site Recovery Manager doesn't have any awareness to point-in-time integration, not when you're using array-based replication anyway, which is a big limitation if you think about it. Let's examine the arrays themselves. And if we go back to the target array,
under data protection session, the protection copies, you can see it actually have multiple point in times that I can recover from, which is awesome. However, Site Recovery Manager has a big limitation, which means that I can only fail over to the last point in time, which is super ineffective if you think about it. Assume a virus outbreak or a logical data corruption. You can fail over to the remote side, but you will fail over with the data corrupted or just inconsistent. So it's no good. In order to overcome this limitation, you can use the Vsi plugin with this Site Recovery Manager integration, which will allow you to fail over or test a specific failover point in time to be used with SRM. So how do you do it? Once you've got your DR set up and replication is running and you've installed SRM and all of this pre-preparation, what you need to go is go back again to the home screen under Global Inventory List, VSI Data Protection System, and go ahead and register a new data protection system. I've already used AppSync. I'm now going to select SRM. This is where your configuration will vary, depends if you're actually running SRM on the Vcenter server or it's on a different server. In my setup, I'm using SRM on a dedicated Windows VM, and Vcenter is running on a dedicated Linux appliance. It's Linux appliance, so they are not running on the same server. So I'm going to select the SRM server IP or FQDN and the port that VSI will communicate with SRM. The port will vary between different SRM configurations. Here I'm using SRM 8.1, so the port is 9086. However, please consult with your VSI user guide for changes or new additions of SRM and potential different ports. This is where I'm selecting my Vcenter, so it's all good. Let's click the test button. You can see the test has been confirmed successfully. And that's pretty much it. Now my VSI server is fully working to work with SRM. In real life environments, you want to have a VSI server per a Vcenter server. Because if you think about it, SRM stands for Site Recovery Manager. So it will assume your site, your source site, for example, is down. And because of that, you want your VSI server to have also be dedicated to your remote DR Vcenter and SRM server. However, for the case of this demo, it's one VSI server that's connected to the local SRM server, and because I'm not going to fail over my entire site, I can still leverage VSI to trigger point-in-time integration. So, once I've got my SRM server fully configured with my VSI plugin, I can go ahead to the VM view, and here you can go ahead to one of the VMs that reside on this specific data store that's being replicated. Go to the Configure tab and XtremIO Native Replication. Here you can see that it's already found the session name for that volume that this VM resides on. And if I go to the available recovery points, I can see all the point in time that are currently used for that. Let's actually test this. I'm going to go back here to my source array, data protection, remote, and I'm actually going to create a manual point in time. So I'm just going to give it my name, and I'm going to not expire it, so we'll see it in a second. So now I'm creating a manual bookmark in my session, a manual point in time that I can use for whatever purposes. Indeed, if I go to the protection copies under session, I can see my point in time bookmark that I just created. Now let's go to the VSI plugin and see what we can learn here. Let's refresh this view, and indeed I can see the point in time that I just created. So you can see that VSI is smart enough to actually look into the native replication engine and gives you all of the point in time that you can restore from. Also, if we go to the session details, we can see some other advanced parameters, such as what's the RPO that I currently set for that volume, which is indeed 60 seconds. What's the session name? Is there an ETA for the next cyclic replication to be completed? And what's the RPO status, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is actually select a point in time, and I've sorted it by time. So remember, I don't want to use the last point in time in my demo, because let's assume this last point in time is as data corrupted. I'm actually going to use the one from 9:45, which is almost an hour prior to the last point in time. And how should I direct SRM to use that point in time? Very easy. Just hover your mouse cursor onto that specific point in time and click Set as SRM Recovery Point and click OK. It will expire that in 3 hours. So know that if you haven't run your failover within 3 hours, it will expire that, but for all purposes, it's absolutely fine. And that's it. It's going to click the processing button, set up success, and that's it. What you can now go ahead and do is go to SRM. Let's assume I want to run a plan migration, which is disaster recovery that assumes that your source site is still up and running. Click the next button, and it will now go ahead and run that specific recovery plan, and will use the point in time that I've actually selected as opposed to the last point in time. So that's it, a very unique integration between the Vsi plugin to Site Recovery Manager to XtremIO native replication, fully allowing you to select a specific point in time for both testing purposes and for failover purposes.